We are just as fallible as anyone else. So if we need help, we need to get it.
Welcome to City Insider, where we have real conversations about the human side of public service. Here in the city of St. Charles, essential services like power, water, public safety, and emergency medical response are delivered around the clock to every home and business. And behind each of these vital services is a person and a story. I'm Kara Silva.
And I'm Lisa Garhan. We're the City of St. Charles communications team and hosts of the City Insider podcast.
Today, we're taking a closer look at the people who protect and serve our community and the often overlooked mental health challenges that come with the job. Police, firefighters, and EMTs are regularly exposed to life-threatening situations, traumatic events, and high-stress environments. Studies show that first responders are at a heightened risk for conditions like post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety. Traditionally, the topic of mental health for first responders was not something those experiencing difficulties felt that they could talk about. But thankfully, this is changing. Joining us are two remarkable leaders who bring decades of experience and perspective: Fire Chief Jeremy Mauthe of the St. Charles Fire Department and Patrol Commander Rob Vicicondi of the St. Charles Police Department.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
They've both seen the job from every angle, from the front lines to positions of leadership. In this episode, we'll explore the challenges and pressures first responders face, how the conversation around mental health is evolving, and what we can all do better to support those who serve our community every single day. So first of all, thank you both for the work you do and for being open to this conversation today. Why don't we start with why this topic is so important to both of you? Jeremy, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So it's critical. Honestly, I'd say it's just as important as physical safety. For a long time, mental health wasn't something people in our line of work really talked about, and I'm sure it's the same with police. We're taught to tough it out, push through, keep moving, but that kind of mindset over time can really do some harm. So first responders are exposed to more trauma in a week than most people probably see in a lifetime. We don't give our people space to process that oftentimes, and so we don't give them the tools to manage it. That'll end up leading to burnout, depression, substance use, and even suicide, and that's the hard truth. So talking about mental health for us breaks down that stigma. It tells people you're not weak, you're human. And since I took over the position as fire chief, I've sought to make that a priority in our department. So we're working to normalize those conversations, provide some access to counseling, utilize our peer support networks. We want our people to know that they're not alone, and taking care of your mental health is part of taking care of your career, your family, and yourself.
I agree. So mental health is important to our officers because, their jobs expose them to high stress, traumatic situations, and that can take a toll over time. Kind of like Chief Mauthe just said, what officers and firemen and even paramedics see in a week is just a lot more than the average person. It can affect their judgment, their relationships, and overall their well-being. I do agree that I think in the past it was more everyone cared about your physical safety, but now, we need to look at mental health and how we can get our first responders help so they can stay resilient, make sound decisions, and continue serving our communities safely and effectively.
So what's one thing you'd like people to know about mental health challenges that you all face every day?
I would say one thing I'd like them to know again is that first responders are often exposed to intense, repeated trauma, which can lead to chronic stress, PTSD, anxiety, depression, even suicide. But the stigma and fear of judgment usually prevents, officers or, I'm sure firemen from wanting to talk about it or wanting to get help. It's hard for us to sometimes verbalize because they'll see it as a weakness instead of realizing, well, first responders are also human. We are just as fallible as anyone else. So if we need help, we need to get it.
Both police and fire, all of our people are exposed continuously to some situations that most people see maybe once in a lifetime, if that. And so for us on the fire side, it could be an accident scene, a medical call. A lot of times, both police and fire, we're responding to mental health crises ourselves for other people. So we're often the first people to witness some of the people's worst days that they've ever had, and we're expected to move on to the next call like nothing happened. So, the truth of it is it builds up for all of us. And it's usually not the big dramatic scenes that weigh on us the heaviest. It's just the accumulation of the day in and day out moments. So one call might be a child in distress. The next one becomes a fatality. And even if everything is done perfectly, those experiences still stick with you. And then on the fire side, the physical demands with us, with the 24-hour shifts, the broken sleep schedule, different extreme work conditions, it's just you can see that mental health is just as important as physical health in our line of work when you consider all those other factors. So unfortunately, it hasn't always been treated that way. Our culture in both the police and fire profession has always been very much just suck it up and move on. While I've seen that slowly start to change, it's still definitely a work in progress. And in our department, we started to try to focus on building a culture where it's okay to talk about mental health. So we want our people to check in with each other, speak up when something's weighing on them, and know that reaching out isn't a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength. And that's a difficult transition for people to understand that they need to do that. So my job isn't just about protecting people on the fire ground. It's about making sure that they're supported to stay healthy in every part of their life.
To give our listeners an idea of what you may typically face in your positions, can each of you talk about a challenging event you may have experienced on the job?
Sure. Sometimes in law enforcement, I've experienced this when I was in investigations. We had a homicide, and unfortunately, it involved family members. They were juveniles, so those are always challenging. But those are instances where it's a very awful call, but we need to focus on the job at hand, collecting evidence, conducting interviews to try and investigate it to the best of our ability. So that's one of those situations where, again, it's an awful incident, and it's really not until you go home that night that you're like, oh, wow, what just happened? Because we're so focused, our training, on doing the best investigation, getting to the bottom of it, trying to figure it out. It's usually like that drive home or the next day you start, even though you're working that case for several days, those emotions kind of affect you. But kind of like Chief Mauthe was saying, the one thing we're trying to do is, it's okay to talk about that. It's okay to get help. That is a sign of strength. I agree with that. And our department as well. The one thing we'll do now, or we've done, is before, like every year, we have what we call a checkup from the neck up. So we'll meet with a counselor or a therapist. That's been modified over the years. So now we will actually have a doctor come out and talk with us. Or if officers don't want that, because some didn't want that, you could even just do it online. So like there's different avenues that, we keep changing our process, but we have different avenues that officers can use when they go to these critical incidents. And if they do want to talk and they need to talk about it, they can do a peer support group with a doctor, with a counselor, or online. So we keep modifying ours and evolving.
Yeah, something that I remember Jeremy said one time was that when you leave an event, that if you're on the rig, you have multiple people that you can kind of like discuss what just happened with and kind of decompress, so to speak. Yeah. On the police side, sometimes you're going in your own squad car individually, so then you're kind of just like letting all this fester in your mind and combing through it yourself without any kind of feedback from anybody else. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit? Yeah,
that's 100% right. Our officers, you're just in a squad car by yourself. So from the first responders to those critical incidents, again, they might talk to some officers while on scene, but once that call's over, they're back in their squad, they're going to the next call, they're alone. But at the same time, I think law enforcement, one thing we do well, and if any cops are listening to this, they'll know this, we kind of have an odd sense of humor. Sometimes we use that to cope. Like if you ever saw that, it's not like we're making fun of the situation. It's more like a simple reminder when we are together, like, hey, today was awful, but, we still got to go on, do business, and kind of a nice reminder that good humanity does exist, even though today might be bad of what we just saw or witnessed. So those are usually some of the things you'll see cops do.
One of the more challenging calls I've had wasn't really the most graphic or dramatic, but it's definitely one that stayed with me. It was a teenage girl who had taken her own life. At the time, my kids were a little bit younger, but not by much. So a situation like that, I really couldn't help but to personalize it, seeing how close in age my children were. And in that moment, you think about the family, you think about what they're feeling, and it kind of got under my skin in a different way. So, that's something people don't always realize about this job. It's not just the larger events, it's the quieter moments that can kind of hit you hardest. It's something about that call that resonated with me, and so it stayed with me. Calls like that remind you why mental health support is so critical in our profession. We're asking people to respond to incredibly difficult situations and then turn around and do it again the next shift. So if we're not giving them the tools to process those experiences, we're really doing a disservice. And I agree with you about the fact that, we get to debrief on those fire engines at all times. We really, other than our battalion chiefs, don't have anyone working alone. So even if you're not looking to talk about it, you're going to have those conversations on the way back, and you at least feel this group mentality of, hey, we went through this together. So on the police side, I definitely think it's a lot harder for them because they just hop right back in their patrol car. If it's the beginning of their shift, they got maybe another 9 hours left to sit there and let their mind marinate on those things. So if you don't have that opportunity for either one of us, police or fire, to just talk through those things or feel like you've got somebody else who's kind of thinking the same way as you, it starts to eat away at you.
Well, this obviously is an important topic that I could tell you're both very passionate about. And speaking out about this, this is kind of like the first step in helping. So how are you encouraging people to speak out about their mental health issues in your departments?
It's important, honestly, because silence is dangerous. So for a long time in this profession, mental health wasn't something that people talked about. I remember when I started, it was definitely one of those, you see your first death, and for everybody else that was on that rig, it was their, 30th, 100th, whatever it was. And, you just don't get that opportunity to talk about those things. So we're trained to stay silent, to compartmentalize, to keep pushing forward no matter what we just experienced. But the reality is that mindset comes at a cost. So first responders face trauma more regularly than most people could imagine. Calls of death, violence, children, suicide, just the emotional toll of it is something that takes place day after day after day with people in crisis. So if we don't give our people permission to process that, it just doesn't go away. So it builds up, it leads to burnout, substance abuse, depression, even worse. So speaking about mental health breaks down that pattern, and that's what we're looking at trying to do. It helps people realize they're not alone and that their feelings are valid, and it kind of starts to chip away at that stigma that says asking for help is weakness. In fact, I'd argue it actually takes more courage to say, hey, I'm not okay, than to just pretend everything's fine. So in our department, one of the things that we're doing is we're making it a priority to try to normalize these conversations. We use speakers, we've got a peer support network, we've got professional counselors, or even just regular check-ins between coworkers. We've tried to teach our officers in the morning as part of their regular routine just to take a look at the body language, understand what's going on with the guys, or if there's somebody that's off, you pull them to the side and just say, hey, is everything going okay? And even if they don't want to talk, they know that someone else is there and thinking about them. And so that's part of a cultural change that we're trying to do, because at the end of the day, this job is truly about having each other's backs, and that includes the mental health aspect as well.
So the police department, one thing I think we're doing well is what I've seen is our officers do a very good job of checking in on each other. Like, they're pretty close on their shifts. But outside of that, like I said, we've had peer support groups come in because sometimes cops only want to talk with cops. So I remember after that homicide that I'd spoken about, they had an officer come out with experience and training and to speak with the rest of us that had to respond to that call. Even dispatchers were there. And I believe, if I remember correctly, even some of the firemen were there. So we had like a group setting to discuss it, how it affected us, what we saw, how we felt. Another thing we're doing, or one of our officers is doing, is Officer Witt actually is trying to get a peer support group within the department. So that is a work in progress. I am aware of that. So I think the best thing we're doing is we're listening and taking the feedback to what our officers want and just giving them more resources. So if you don't like A, maybe you can do B. If you don't like B, then we'll give you C. And at the end of the day, I would say, we do have good groups of officers where if they just want to talk with each other, they do that. And if that helps them cope or recognize that they have an issue, then perhaps it's just their friend telling them, like, hey, maybe get some outside help out of here.
If there is a first responder listening right now, what would be the first step if they are looking to get some mental health help?
I think the first step is recognizing that, you do need help and realizing that it's okay. Like I said, just because you're a fireman or a police officer or just a first responder, you're still human. I know we're trained to still function during these, critical incidents, but you're still human. It's going to affect you. You need to recognize that and recognize you're going to have a more difficult time, number one, doing your job, and number two, living your life if you're not getting the help that you need. So how useful are you going to be at home with your family or your friends if you're suffering and staying silent? Nobody should have to live that way. And also how are you going to serve your community then? Because that's still going to affect you when you're here. So it's like you need to get help, recognize that you need the help, and hopefully you can get the help through your department. Like our department, if you said something to anyone, they would get you help. Like that's just how we are. If you said it to your fellow patrolman or your sergeant or your supervisor, they're going to get you help. So I would say just recognize you need the help and then ask for the help. And I guarantee today it's just the way law enforcement and first responders, how we're changing this mental health. The fact that we're having this talk is showing that it's changing, which is good. It'll eventually kill that stigma in time, and hopefully more people will get help.
And what about the fire department? Similar?
Yeah, so I agree with Rob that a good place to start is definitely within your own department. A lot of departments like ours, they have on the fire side peer support personnel. We also have the EAP, and I think that's fairly consistent amongst all the cities. So they'll connect you to counselors, hopefully ones who can kind of understand the unique stressors of police and fire. We're pretty fortunate in Illinois we've got a firefighter peer support network. It's a statewide initiative. It trains our own people from fire departments across the state to provide, counseling, teaches them how to approach some of these situations. So we have several trained peer support members in our department. So if someone feels the need to talk, there's always someone who can relate and they can offer guidance and get them in the right direction that they need. So one thing that I will say, though, that is definitely tough is the challenge of finding the right therapist. It can be really difficult to understand the uniqueness of the police and fire side. And, my wife, she's a mental health specialist. And so she always talks about therapy being like finding a comfy pair of shoes. You've got to try on a few before you find the ones that are right for you. So somebody who understands this world and can guide you in a way that resonates with your experiences. There's something called the 100 Club that's pretty universal, at least in the Chicagoland area. They actually have mental health specialists that they've actually got an app for it where these are vetted people who understand the uniqueness of law enforcement and the fire service. So you can on your own just tap onto that app and it'll scroll through maybe a dozen or a dozen and a half therapists who have already been vetted for that intended purpose. So,
just to round out this discussion, let's touch on some of the positive emotions you've experienced in your jobs. Can either of you share a powerful moment you experienced as a police officer and a firefighter?
I've been on quite a few calls over the years where someone was, without question, clinically dead. No pulse, no breathing. And through the work of our crews and the medical interventions, we were able to get them back. So those are really powerful moments. One that stands out for me was a teenager that actually, a drowning victim. He was at the bottom of the pool for several minutes before anyone found him. Actually, a couple kids noticed it, and then they told their mom, and mom found dad, and dad fished him out from the bottom of the pool. So when we got there, he had absolutely no signs of life. So we went to work, CPR, airway management, ALS interventions, all the things that we do to try to bring them back. And not only did he survive, he made a full recovery. So knowing that you had a hand in that, it's an indescribable feeling. So those are the moments that kind of stay with you and remind you why you do this job.
There's a couple. One that just popped in my head. You do this job, you go on a lot of calls. Sometimes you do kind of forget the things you've done. At least I do. So I remember as a detective, I had an armed robbery that involved a restaurant and a firearm. So as a detective, I was investigating it. I was investigating it with another agency, and together we were able to, develop a suspect, arrest the suspect, because there was a lull there where we couldn't find him. We thought he was out of state. We didn't know where this person was, but eventually we found him. He got arrested. And again, it's just, as an officer, you're just doing your job. It's, okay, I'm investigating this. Hopefully we can get this guy off the street so he doesn't do another armed robbery or hurt somebody. It just didn't hit me until I spoke with one of the victims after he was arrested, and she saw his image on the news, and she's like, that's the guy. And she said, thank you so much for something to the effect of thank you so much for getting him, because we were afraid he was going to come back. And I never thought of that. I was just doing my job. I was like, from their perspective, is he going to come back and do something else to us? I don't know, that affected me. I don't know why. It was just one of those oh, I'm really glad I got this guy now. I mean, of course we're trying to get him off the street, but I didn't even think both of the victims were thinking this guy might come back and do something again.
It's true. And so in hearing that, what would you like listeners to know about police officers and the firefighters serving their communities, and why should people consider those for careers?
It's a great career. It's a noble career. You get to go out and help people. It's fun. There are hard days. It's challenging, but I mean this when I say this. I've told officers this. I've never not wanted to come and do this job, even on the hardest days. Like that's just the truth. You'll make great friendships. You'll learn a lot. I think being a police officer, in a way, like with the training and how you learn how to talk to people and interact with strangers, the life lessons you learn, being a police officer, it makes you stronger in ways you didn't think it would. Like it is, if that kind of makes sense. It has taught me things on just how to be a better human, I will say. And I think that's kind of what I'm proud of. Is it's taught me a lot, and it's given me a lot of experiences that I've used in my personal life. So if you are interested in that as a career, I would say just know it is challenging. You're going to have rough days, but you're going to be surrounded by great people, and not just the police department. We love working with the fire department. Those guys are great. So you'll get to share those experiences, good or bad. And at the end of the day, you'll be doing it for a cause that'll help a community.
Obviously, I've got a bit of a bias, right? I think that the fire department is truly one of the best jobs in the world. So you can make a good living doing something that really matters. So, you're going in every single day, and even if in your mind it was a small or insignificant call that you went on, for that individual, that was a really important moment for them where they felt helpless, and they called 911 to have us respond and turn that day around to, whether it be a medical call, and it could be something as simple as somebody trying to install a water line and they broke it, and so now it's flooding their basement, and that's a very stressful moment for them. So for us to be able to make a living in a career where every single day we get to go and just help people out, it's a great calling for us to be able to do. And then one thing that I'd say that's unique cultural wise to our department specifically, and that we're proud of, is we really have built an environment with high expectations, but we balance that with really strong support. So our officers and our firefighters, they really do go above and beyond to set people up for success when they come here, starting on day one. So we invest in our people personally and professionally. So we make sure they got the tools, the training, and the guidance, everything they need to be successful. Anyone who's looking at trying to get involved in our fire department, we've got a current list that goes through April of 2026. And then after that, we're going to be looking for the new list. So I would say probably November, December-ish is when we're going to publish things this year. So you got an interest, come to us. We're an outstanding city. They take really good care of their employees, both police and fire, and I think somebody who coming here would be very happy. We've had a number of people come over from other places in a similar vein. I know on the police side, it's the same thing. We have something that draws people from other places, and we don't really lose a lot of people at all. This is a destination place for people. So, and we're proud of that fact. We want to keep building on it.
Kind of like Chief Mauthe just said, I didn't realize, we were just talking about this. We have a lateral system where you can lateral from another police department. We've gotten a lot of laterals over the years, some really good officers from other departments. So like he said, we are also a destination police department because when we went through the numbers, we've never had an officer leave the St. Charles Police Department and lateral to another agency. And same thing, we are also looking to hire. We have now a lateral pool. So you can go online and just put in an application. We'll review it. Once we get a couple, we'll do interviews. So we're constantly looking to hire new officers, good lateral officers, or a traditional list, which we should be working on to have come out this year. We have a current traditional list, but it's actually coming down to the end. I think for all I know, I think we might be at the end of it. So we'll be testing if you want to be a traditional hire as well for our police department.
Well, thank you both. This conversation has been wonderful, and I'm glad that we're able to have it. We're at a place now in our culture where people are talking about it more. So I'm going to just wrap things up with this one final question. So obviously you're leaders in high-pressure situations. So is there a mantra or a guiding principle or some philosophy that you follow that helps keep you grounded?
It's really honestly comes down to one guiding principle. Take care of your people, and then the rest will follow. So, in my role, you're constantly pulled in a variety of different directions. But at the end of the day, if I can focus on supporting the firefighters, making sure they've got their equipment, that they're trained, that they're also genuinely cared for, That's what keeps everything else on track.
I would say the one thing I always try and do is first and foremost is listen. Listen to what people are saying, take it in, and do the best I can do to help them. The one thing I've always tried to do in this job, whether it's with citizens or our own officers, is if I can make a positive impact in some way, that's really, I think, what it's about.
Well, thank you both so much, Chief Mauthe, Commander Vicicondi. Thank you for joining us and for your honest and thoughtful perspective on such an important topic.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
In this segment, Inside City Hall, we introduce our listeners to the people elected to serve St. Charles. They are residents of the community chosen to lead our city and help shape its future. We had an election recently, and Clint Hull, retired judge of the 16th Judicial Circuit, was sworn in as mayor on May 5th in front of a large, energetic crowd. The excitement and anticipation were palpable, and it was a memorable evening filled with energy, celebration, and a strong sense of community. So without further ado, welcome Mayor Clint Hull.
Thank you very much.
Happy to have you. So I have to ask, what's the word or phrase that you would use to best describe how you felt that evening?
You know what? Overwhelmed. I think overwhelmed is probably the biggest one, just from a standpoint that I've been here my whole life. Running for mayor is something that I'd always hoped to be able to do, to serve the city, and that night to look out in the crowd, to see my parents. My parents have been good a long time, but my parents' friends were there, my friends were there, my family was there, members of the community were there, and so, when I looked out, it was a little bit overwhelming at first, and then that overwhelming turned into a feeling of excitement and appreciation, and like you had said, a ton of energy and excited and ready to go.
So you said that being mayor of St. Charles is something that you had dreamed of,
Yeah.
and that you can't think of a better way to give back to your community than to serve as mayor. So do you know when the idea of becoming mayor kind of first crystallized in your mind?
Absolutely, and thanks for asking me. People have asked me that a lot, and I will tell you. So I grew up on 4th Street in St. Charles. My mom was a teacher at the high school, and my dad worked for St. Charles Kitchens, and Mayor Norris was a friend of theirs. So Mayor Norris was somebody that would be in our house from time to time, and they would refer to him as Mayor Norris. And, of course, we were interested in what a mayor did. And so over time, as I got older, I paid more attention to what the mayor did, the role that Mayor Norris played. And it was something that, I just learned really early on how blessed I was to live in St. Charles. His messaging was that. My parents' messaging was that. And so over time, I just thought, man, oh, man, what a cool thing to be able to do to serve the city. And so I always wanted to give back. That's kind of what our parents taught us. And then after I graduated from law school and moved back, I was looking to get involved in the community. And the first way to do that was to run for the park board. And then got me involved in intergovernmental. Got to know Mayor Klinkhammer, Mayor DeWitt, and it just kind of went from there.
So it was a long time coming.
Absolutely. And then Mayor Rogina was one of my teachers. I should have mentioned that. He was one of my teachers in high school. And so watching him become mayor, it was just one of those things that I just knew the people. I knew how much they enjoyed the job. And most importantly, it's about giving back to the city that's given so much to me.
So listening to your remarks that you made the night of your swearing in, it's clear how much you love St. Charles. And even hearing you talk today, you finished your remarks by saying, it's time to get to work.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you did. You wasted no time immediately engaging with city staff and other key stakeholders, and you've become immersed in, the hot topics and city issues. So can you share a little bit about what these first few weeks have been like for you?
Yeah, you know what? One is I was sitting in the mayor's office, looking out the window, looking at the dam, looking at Hotel Baker. The sun was shining. And I just kind of took a moment to think, I can't believe that it's time. I can't believe that I'm here. And when I say I'm here, it's just, the team that I have walked into is amazing. And what I've spent the first, actually after being elected, but after taking office, the number one priority for me has been to be able to get to know all the staff members at the city of St. Charles. I've been down there 5 days a week. I've been keeping office hours. I've been down there working at it. But the most important thing is just to get to know everybody that's working for the city. I will tell you that the one thing that I've learned right out of the gate, whether it's the two of you, whether it's been Public Works, the police, is that Our staff loves working for the city of St. Charles, the pride that they have and the job that they do. And that messaging or that feeling just resonates in almost every conversation that I've had. So the most important part to me of the job is the people, not only the staff, but the residents of St. Charles. And so right out of the gate, the most important thing to do has been to get to know everybody. And believe me, I'm not done with that. There's a lot of people to meet, but each and every day I've been out working and doing that. And this morning I was at Public Works, and we're just going to keep working at it.
So as we mentioned, you did hit the ground running. What do you see as your top priorities that you want to accomplish over the next 4 years?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that I said throughout the campaign was, there have always been, and there are, and there will be issues that are really pressing to the city of St. Charles. I mean, you look at the Charlestown Mall. People talk about that all the time. Talk about redevelopment of the old police station site. We talk about the IMEA power contract. I mean, the list goes on and on as to pressing issues. But the most important thing that I believe I'm going to do out of the gate and for the next 4 years is to build a team, because no matter what the issue is, you need to have a strong team. And no matter what issue we're facing, if we have a strong team, we're going to be able to tackle those issues. And so right out of the gate, and when I say team, it's not just staff, it's the entire community coming together and then working to address whatever those issues are. I mean, so right out of the gate, things that are really important, I think, to the city of St. Charles, the Charlestown Mall, the East Gateway. I mean, when I was out knocking on doors and talking to people, the Charlestown Mall has been empty for almost 8 years, and people are just hungry to get information to know what is it that can be done. And so that's one. The IMEA contract, which is not something that people love to talk about, but man, oh man, it's one of the most important issues that's going to impact our future. We got to work our way through that, and so again, that's something that we need to do, because that's not going to impact us for the next 4 years. It's going to impact us for the next 30 years. And so so those are two right out of the gate, but there's a lot more, as I've learned over the last 2 weeks.
Those are all big, complex issues too.
Absolutely.
So.
All right. So for our final question, and this is one that we kind of end with all of our guests, do you have a personal philosophy or a guiding principle or a mantra that helps shape the way that you are leading St. Charles and will continue to lead St. Charles?
I don't know if I have a word or a mantra. I mean, you're going to continue to. The night that I was sworn in, I said, you know what, I feel very confident about the future of St. Charles. And then rhetorically asked, why am I so confident? And I have 3 words for that. We are St. Charles. And so what do I mean by that? When I say we are St. Charles, we're a team. It doesn't matter whether it's the residents, the businesses, our intergovernmental, Park District Library, schools, and then our 501c3 organizations. We are St. Charles. And so I think to recognize that, for me, no matter what situation I've come into, I understand the importance of bringing people together, I think that we have a lot more in common than we have differences. And so trying to bring people together to make sure that they get to work on things that they're passionate about is what's really important to me. So, teamwork, but at the end of the day, it just really comes into, we have such a wonderful community. My job is to try to build that team, and then if we're working together as a team, I think the sky's the limit. And one of the things I grew up with was, that St. Charles is the best. I believe that. I'm its mayor. I know that I'm sure other mayors in other towns say the same thing about theirs, but we're blessed to live in this community, and I just am so proud to be able to work with everybody over the next 4 years to take us to new heights.
Well, you were a former coach, so I think if anyone's going to be building a team, you're the person for the job.
I love it.
So, Mayor Hull, thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure having you here, and thank you for sharing your insights with us and with our listeners. We appreciate it. We appreciate you, and we wish you nothing but the most success possible.
Thanks. And I'm gonna add one more thing.
Yeah, go for it.
It's an invitation to everybody. When I talk about that, we are St. Charles. We want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. I'm going to be down at City Hall. We're going to be talking. And so anybody that has ideas or thoughts, good or bad, I mean, not everybody's always happy, and that's okay, but we want to hear from everybody. And what can we do for you to make the city of St. Charles what it needs to be? And so we're here. We're ready to listen. And that's just an open invitation.
Well, I love that. Thank you again.
Excellent.
And thanks for listening.
Thank you. That's it for this episode of City Insider, the limited series podcast where we explore the human side of public service in the city of St. Charles. Thank you to the St. Charles Public Library for the use of their sound studio, and thank you for listening.